What if the pain you feel every day isn't caused by what happens to you, but by the meaning your mind assigns to it? Most people walk through life convinced that circumstances are the problem. They blame people, situations, timing, luck, or the past. Yet quietly, without noticing, the real damage happens inside their own thoughts. From the moment you wake up, your mind begins working against you. It replays yesterday's mistakes. It predicts future failures. It compares your life to others. It magnifies small problems into heavy emotional burdens. And the longer this pattern continues, the more natural it feels, as if this is simply how life is supposed to be. But the Stoics understood something that modern society still ignores. Your mind is not broken. It is simply undisciplined. Left unchecked, it will create suffering even in safe conditions. Marcus Aurelius once wrote that the soul takes on the color of its thoughts. In other words, your inner world slowly becomes whatever you repeatedly think about. If your thoughts are chaotic, fearful, and self-critical, your life will feel the same way. If they are calm, grounded, and intentional, your life begins to reflect that stability. Negative thinking does not disappear by pretending problems don't exist. It fades when you learn how to interpret reality accurately, respond with discipline, and stop feeding emotions that distort the truth. The Stoic approach is not about avoiding hardship. It is about becoming mentally structured enough that hardship no longer controls you. Most mental suffering begins with interpretation, not with reality itself. Something small happens, and instantly your mind fills in the blanks with assumptions. A delayed message becomes rejection. A short reply becomes disrespect. A mistake becomes proof that you are incapable. None of these conclusions are facts. They are emotional judgments formed automatically by an untrained mind. Epictetus made this clear when he said that people are disturbed not by events, but by the opinions they form about events. The event itself is neutral. The damage comes from the meaning you attach to it. Think about how often your mind has convinced you of something that later turned out to be false. You assumed someone disliked you, only to discover they were overwhelmed. You expected failure before even trying. You believed your most fearful thoughts as if they were unquestionable truths. Over time, this habit trains your mind to expect negativity even when none exists. The Stoic response is simple, but not easy. You stop questioning the event and start questioning the thought. When your mind begins to spiral, you pause and ask yourself what actually happened, stripped of emotion and story. Then you ask what interpretation your mind is adding on top of it. Finally, you choose the calmest and most realistic explanation available. This process slows the chain reaction that turns a minor moment into hours of unnecessary suffering. Marcus Aurelius practiced this relentlessly. When confronted with stress, betrayal, or uncertainty, he removed emotional language from his thoughts until only facts remained. He believed that when opinion is removed, complaint disappears with it. Living this way does not make you passive. It makes you precise. You respond to reality instead of reacting to fear. Another major source of negative thinking comes from trying to control what was never yours to control. The human mind wastes enormous energy worrying about other people's opinions, future outcomes, past decisions, and unpredictable circumstances. This constant mental effort feels productive, but it is actually a form of quiet self-torture. The Stoics ended this cycle by drawing a firm boundary between what belongs to you and what is not. Your thoughts, your effort, your values, your actions, and your response to situations are within your control. Other people's behavior, outcomes, timing, recognition, and the past are not. Most people live as if this is reversed. They obsess over external results while neglecting their inner standards. They try to manage how they are perceived instead of how they behave. This imbalance creates anxiety because the mind cannot find stability in things it does not control. When you redirect your attention toward what belongs to you, negative thinking begins to lose strength. Anxiety depends on helplessness to survive. Personal responsibility destroys that helplessness. When you focus on preparation instead of approval, effort instead of outcome, values instead of validation, the mind calms naturally. You stop drowning in imagined futures and return to the only place where real influence exists. The Stoics also understood that a mind unused to discomfort becomes fragile. Modern life removes nearly every form of challenge. Comfort is constant, convenience is immediate, and difficulty is avoided whenever possible. While this feels pleasant, it trains the brain to panic when anything uncomfortable arises. A delay feels unbearable. A criticism feels threatening. A setback feels catastrophic. This is fertile ground for negative thinking. To counter this, Stoics practiced voluntary discomfort, not as punishment, but as preparation. They exposed themselves to manageable hardship to train the mind to remain steady under pressure. Seneca, despite his wealth, slept on hard surfaces and ate simple food to remind himself that comfort was not necessary for stability. The goal was not suffering, but confidence. When you prove to yourself that discomfort is survivable, fear loses credibility. Choosing small, intentional challenges rewires the stress response. Cold exposure, physical exertion, disciplined routines, uncomfortable conversations, and temporary restraint all teach the brain that difficulty does not equal danger. Over time, situations that once triggered anxiety begin to feel neutral. The imagination no longer fills uncertainty with disaster because experience has already disproven it. Another reason negative thinking overwhelms people is unrealistic expectation. Many suffer not because life is difficult, but because they expect it to be easy. When plans fail, people disappoint, or obstacles appear. The shock itself fuels emotional reactions. The Stoics neutralized this by mentally preparing for setbacks before they occurred. This was not pessimism, but realism. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily that he would encounter selfishness, dishonesty, and resistance. By doing this, he removed surprise from adversity. Without surprise, emotion loses its intensity. When you expect obstacles, they arrive as confirmations, not crises. The mind stays composed because it is not caught off guard. Preparing for difficulty creates emotional armor. Delays become manageable. Criticism becomes tolerable. Change becomes less threatening. You stop asking why something happened and start responding with clarity. Life does not become easier, but your reaction becomes steadier. Negative thinking also thrives when the mind escapes the present moment. It drags attention into the past to replay regret or pushes it into the future to invent fear. Rarely does negativity exist in the present, because the present contains action, not imagination. The Stoics viewed the present moment as a place of power. It is the only time where effort is possible. When attention returns to what is happening now, mental spirals lose momentum. Fear lives in anticipation. Regret lives in memory. Calm exists only in engagement. Training yourself to return to the present interrupts the habit of overthinking. Simple practices, such as controlled breathing, sensory awareness, and single-task focus anchor the mind. Each return strengthens attention and weakens anxiety. Another deeply rooted cause of negative thinking is the inner dialogue that runs unnoticed throughout the day. This voice comments, judges, predicts, and criticizes constantly. For many people, it is harsh and unforgiving. Over time, they mistake this voice for truth. The Stoics recognized that the inner voice shapes identity. If left unchallenged, it becomes the ruler of your life. Rather than accepting every thought, Stoicism teaches examination. You observe the thought without merging with it. You identify the belief underneath it. Then you replace it with a rational and grounded perspective. This is not denial or forced optimism. It is disciplined thinking. Marcus Aurelius wrote reminders to himself repeatedly, not because he lacked strength, but because he understood that repetition builds character. When your inner dialogue becomes calmer, firmer, and more accurate, negative thinking struggles to survive. The mind begins to guide instead of attack. Confidence grows from self-respect, not from external praise. The Stoics also believe that emotions should not be the authority over decisions. Emotions fluctuate and exaggerate. Values provide stability. When actions are guided by wisdom, courage, fairness, and restraint, the mind becomes structured. Emotional reactions lose dominance because decisions are no longer made in moments of turbulence. Instead of asking how you feel, you ask how you choose to act. This shift removes drama from the internal world. Fear may appear, but does not command. Doubt may arise, but it does not decide. When life is guided by principle rather than impulse, mental clarity becomes consistent. Finally, negative thinking fades when movement replaces stagnation. When people feel stuck, the mind fills the empty space with doubt and fear. Action, even small action, disrupts this pattern. The Stoics valued consistent effort over perfection. Small progress builds trust in oneself. Momentum restores confidence. When you begin your day with a simple win, confront one meaningful challenge, and track effort rather than outcome, the mind receives evidence of capability. Identity shifts from passive thinker to active participant. Over time, negative thinking loses its foundation because action repeatedly disproves it. Negative thinking is not mysterious. It is a habit built through repetition. And like any habit, it can be dismantled. When you train interpretation, focus on control, embrace challenge, prepare for difficulty, anchor attention, refine inner dialogue, live by values, and build momentum, the mind becomes an ally instead of an obstacle. You are not weak for having negative thoughts. You are human. Strength begins when you stop allowing those thoughts to dominate your behavior. Stoicism does not promise comfort. It offers resilience. And resilience is what allows peace to exist even in uncertain conditions. Choose one principle to apply today. One deliberate thought. One disciplined action. One small step forward. That is enough to begin changing how your mind works. Your mind is your territory. And starting now, it can finally belong to you.